the third video in the brush stage for the Legion Champion. As I've repeatedly said during these videos, the first video very much concentrates on the theory behind how we do this. The secondary and the third video encompass every brush stroke. If you did want to see how to do a particular portion of the miniature, these videos are for you. But if you want the theory and you'd like to apply it to your own miniatures, please look at the first video. So very much in a similar vein to how we've built up the red so far, I start with my mid-tone and I build up from there. As the paint is still slightly as the paint is still slightly wet, very important difference, I can mix my highlights immediately into them. What this does is create a slow, diffuse highlight. While the paint dries, all the molecules, all the acrylic pigments are still suspended and they keep moving in and out between each other. If you try wet blending in this manner, it produces a very, very smooth blend, but it won't produce the finished article. You will still need to apply layering techniques and glazes in order to soften out those transitions. Just admiring my handiwork there. At this point, if you are following along with this guide, painting up your new Legion Praetor maybe, some models from the Weekender, which is coming up very soon as I record, well, it should be looking darn fine by now. And you know what, you should take some time to appreciate your work. Congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back. This isn't half bad. The brush strokes I've applied there. As you can see, they are not the most blended. I want to give the image of ceramite. I want to give texture to the piece. I don't just want thin, gradual glazes. I want to produce atmosphere. I want to produce a story. Every brush stroke tells the story of this character. As you can see here, I've mixed hot orange and predominantly sunny skin tone, using the very, very tip of the brush. Just lightly applying it. I don't need much pressure, I'm just wiping it back and forth. You can tell that my brushwork is consistent with the previous layers. Have a look, should be coming up, a little jump cut there. So have a look at how I move the brush back and forth. You can see it's consistent. I'm not moving it diagonally, I'm not moving it every which way. It's very consistent down the arm guard of the miniature. This is a mixture of white sands plus sunny skin tone, and I believe there's a touch of hot orange in there, and I'll increase the amount of white sands that exists in the mixture at the very, very top of the highlights. Very soft, very light grazes with the brush in order to give me what I am looking for. One of the questions that appeared on the Patreon is, why did I use the certain colours that I do? Why do I use certain colours? And it might be worth discussing here, because we've been through the theory, you know roughly what kind of brush strokes you need to employ. Let's talk about the theory behind the choices of paints. Well, it's very, very context driven. I'm one of these really annoying people who answers a question with a question, and it's one of my least admirable traits, I fully admit. But in this instance, we are painting a Blood Angel. Why do I use violet in the shadows? Why don't I use brown, a dark brown, or even a blue? For the highlights, why don't I just stick with pink and then glaze it back? So let's examine this further. The Blood Angel scheme I've devised here uses a wide variety of hues. If you get a colour wheel, have a look at it. The red encompasses colours from the violet range, and violet's different from purple. Violet's much darker on the colour spectrum, has less value, all the way through to a desaturated yellow. Essentially, it's a skin tone with quite a lot of yellow in there, but also a lot of white. So we can say that the range of hues is much more diverse than, say, a more utilitarian legion, like the Sons of Horus. Because of the amount of colours involved, we instinctively know, because we're human beings, because of our innate knowledge of colour psychology, we know that this is polished, gleaming armour from a character or a figure or a legion that enjoys the more artistic bent. They take care of their armour, they like the embellishment, all by just simply looking at the hue range that we employ. We know something about the character of this piece. I did not use brown because when you add black, I mean, you could try it for yourself as an experiment. Try add black into red. It produces a very muddy appearance, a very muddy, kind of like black leather effect. It's not very interesting to look at, or I would argue it's not as interesting as violet in the shadows of this ceramic armor plate. If I were to use brown in the shadows, it would give a very different color psychology. It would give you a very different impression of the piece. You could say that this piece maybe does not take as good care of its armor. You could say that the armor hasn't been polished to that high gleam, that it's been damaged, broken, bent. In this particular instance, I do not want to feed those kind of thoughts. I want to give a gleaming, resplendent look to the armor. You can absolutely use blue, because if you look at blue on the color wheel, it might be worth further investigation, and it is something we will more fully explore during the course of the Patreon, is how we perceive certain colors, and especially their value range. Innately, when we look at, say, a navy on the color wheel in comparison to a yellow, the navy is much darker. In fact, it's the darkest color as we perceive it of a pure hue, and yellow, especially sol yellow, is the brightest. If you want to explore this further, I'd highly suggest take a black miniature, undercoat it black, white zenithal highlight, cover the entire thing in a dark navy mixed with a pinch of black, and then increase the amount of yellow that's in the solution to highlight it. Again, it's an experiment just to get you used to these kind of color transitions, and again, it is something I do fully intend to explore, especially with some larger pieces that we have planned for the Patreon. The style I've just described, I've mentioned it in the Emperor's Children PDF as a fantastical appearance to Legion armor. I've very roughly kind of cut in half. Fantastical armor has wider hue ranges and wider values, so that means there are more colors involved in the armor plate, and there's more of an emphasis going from black to white on the value scale. If we were working with a more utilitarian legion, say the Death Guard, say the Sons of Horus, well, we wouldn't use as nearly as many colours. I can continue the refinement phases by adding more Thamar Black into the darkest recesses, especially those portions that will be metal later on, and I can also use very fine glaze layers of Elendil Violet, and I can even mix in a touch of black in the very darkest portions. When we add black, it kills interest, it kills colour, and I would only use this very sparingly. Let's speed this section up. I continue on with refinement marks, adding very dark shadows. That's Elendil violet plus a touch of black. Again, some of it will look a bit uneven. As you can see, the line isn't great, but I can refine that further with the reds and the glazes I'll put on later. If I really do mess up this portion, you can always weather it. It's our best tool for masking any mistakes that we make. I'm adding a hot orange glaze on the very top of the jetpack, just to warm everything up. It's a very light, thin layer, very watery, and I'm not looking to change the underlying hue so much. I'm looking to tint it. You can see how that orange is a lot more vibrant than the reds next to it with the side supports. My best friend, Sunny Skin Tone, the paint I own shares in, so please go out and buy some. If you were looking for an alternative for this, Scale 75 do an amazing paint called, I need to look this up, Golden Skin. Completely different to Sunny Skin Tone. No, it's Golden Skin, but it carries very much the same pigmentation, and you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between the two. Again, I find edge highlighting incredibly boring, so in order to break things up a little bit, I'll add a few scratches here and there with the brush. You can see an interesting point here. That brush is a lot bigger than you may feel like you need for this kind of procedure. Don't worry about that. We need the very tip. That's what we're looking for. The very tip of the brush is what we need to be concise. The belly of the brush will contain more of the pigmentation, and it'll carry more of the moisture of it. Using pure Sunny Skin Tone here, and I'll add a very small amount of white sands as my very final highlight. I can't help but reiterate that these techniques are very much meant for character level miniatures. Doing a force like this is very time intensive. You'll get excellent results, but my god, it'll take you a while. Only reserve these very fine highlights and skills for your character miniatures, unless you can dedicate the time towards it. And try and paint up a character first. It goes against perceived wisdom that you need to paint up a few tactical marines first before you get onto a character, but just try it. Try a character, time yourself doing so, and that way you can work out whether painting all your miniatures to this style, it might not be best for you. It might be a case that you work it out and it takes about 60 odd years to do, which of course is impractical. So find the techniques that work for you in the time frame allocated. I cannot emphasize this enough. Time yourself, and then you can work out a flowchart. If we're looking around a 2,000 point army to get a really nicely done force, we are looking from anywhere between 60 to 100 hours. So look over your working weeks, find time, find the odd hour here and there to really locate how much time you have to allocate to your collection, to your army. The more hours can be spent on character pieces. A Primarch will typically take anywhere between 10 to 18 hours, so that's a good chunk of your 60 to 100 hours up on a Primarch level miniature right there. The rest you can spend getting very good simplistic techniques. If you are looking for those, have a look at my Ultramarines breakdown of how we tackle infantry. That will a lot of good information in there into how you could go about thinking about breaking down a force. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and if you have any questions about this tutorial series, please let me know. Be in touch. Have a good one. Bye bye.